May not be saying the name right, but there is a new addition to the Oregon Zoo. And his name is something like Paiute. That sounds as close as you can get, I suppose. We'll just call him Paiute. Paiute is a cougar, otherwise known as a panther or a mountain lion. But out here in the West, we call them cougars. And up until March of this year, Paiute didn't have a name, didn't have a home. He was, in fact, an orphan cougar who lived in the wild. He was discovered. He was brought to the Oregon Zoo, where he now lives. You can actually see Paiute in the Cougars Crossing exhibit, but you might have a little bit of a hard time spotting him because, as zoo officials found out, because Paiute was not raised by humans, he was not bottle fed, his wild instincts are basically intact. They are deeply imprinted upon him. And so Paiute wants to make sure to check you out before you have a chance to check him out. But you can go out there, and I'm sure as time goes on, he'll get more used to people watching him. But Paiute's not really aware of his instincts. He's not aware of the fact that he is a cougar, and yet he follows those instincts of a cougar very fully, very faithfully. And in one important way, we, as humans, are very much like Paiute. We too have instincts that are imprinted on us very, very strongly. And they are instincts for self-justification and self-gratification. These instincts basically make us act and think in ways that are counter to the one who created us, to the character of God. These instincts were imprinted upon our psyche by Satan at the fall in the Garden of Eden, when we as mankind decided that we would rather obey the serpent than Yahweh. Now, we're not really consciously aware most of the time of this imprinting of the flesh, of the fallen nature on our lives. But make no mistake, we follow it fully and faithfully. Now, in the latter portion of chapter 23, in fact, in the whole of chapter 23, Jesus Christ reveals to us this imprinting of the flesh. He pulls back the curtain. He brings to our conscious awareness what we have been following all of our lives in its fullest realization with the Pharisees, the scribes, the religious leaders of Israel. And at the same time, he reveals this instinctual sin nature in us. Now, as I mentioned last time, in chapter 23, Jesus comes across as pretty harsh. The old adage, can't we all just get along? And why can't Jesus just be, kind? He is love after all. And why does he have to be so harsh? Well, Jesus comes across harsh here because no one stands in the way of the people coming to his Father. That's one of the things that really, got Jesus riled up, when anyone stood in the way of coming to the Father. Remember, just a few chapters ago, he cleansed the temple. He threw out the money changers. He threw out those that were trying to make a profit off of people coming to God through the sacrificial system. And he said that this house was to be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. They had so filled the court of the temple that the Gentiles could no longer even approach. They could no longer understand. They could no longer be prepared for the coming of the Messiah, which was pictured through the temple and through the sacrificial system. And so Jesus got mad, and Jesus threw him out. Now he addresses another impediment, and that was the attitude and the spiritual condition of Israel's leader. But the wonderful thing to keep in mind here is that even though there is harshness displayed, there is also mercy. And I love how the prophet says, in wrath, remember mercy. And that's what Jesus does here in this chapter as well. That God's purpose in revealing the imprinting of the flesh on our lives is not for punishment, but for healing, not for wrath, but for mercy. Now in chapter 23, verses 13 through the end, we're going to see Jesus use the word woe. And it's really not the same way that we use the word woe anymore. It's like, whoa, man, dude, I'm not quite sure what it means, but, you hear it a lot in people using it in sentences, something like cool or astonishing or something like that. But woe here, W-O-E, is a word that Jesus will use 7 times. There are, then, 7 woes in this chapter. Whoa. Woe in the and it's not stopping a horse either. Woe in the biblical terms, in the Greek, it's a term of judgment. And I like how a couple other translations put this term. One, the Message paraphrase says, "I've had it with you. You're hopeless." In the New Century Bible, it says, "How terrible for you." It's basically used to express pain, lament, but also a threat of judgment. Whoa. So Jesus will use this word 7 times. And of course you know that 7 in the Bible is the number 7 is the number of completeness. So this is really a complete, sending up of the attitude of the flesh is expressed in the leaders of Israel. But Jesus also uses another word. He uses the word hypocrite. When was the last time you called somebody a hypocrite? And we do use that word occasionally today. Not what you might call on the nice list. This word comes actually from the acting world. It's a drama word. And in the Greek and Roman theater, the actors would wear masks and they would employ mechanical devices to change the character of their voices, to alter their voice. And the idea, when it came into common usage, was that the person that you were portraying on the outside is not the person behind the mask or behind the voice. And so Jesus is going to call the religious leaders hypocrites, and we'll see very easily why he uses that term. So let's begin. We're starting in verse 13. And this is woe number 1. "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves, nor allow those who would enter to go in." So woe number 1 is